Hi guys, it's Ben here from T-Rex Space Station. How's everyone doing? And welcome to this video in which I'm going to explore some of the Disney games that I have on the Sega Mega Drive. Now these are games that are generally all very high quality, which I associate with a lot of nostalgia and a lot of fun from when I was a kid. And so really it's a lot of fun going back through these games and revisiting them and playing them, and I thought, it'd be cool to kind of talk through my collection today. As I said, most of the games that Disney produced for the system are of a very high standard and are very, very good quality. The graphics especially have been really good in these games. But there are some exceptions to the rule, and I thought that I'd start off with one of those exceptions before I get onto the games that I really like. So yes, this is, if you can see, Tailspin. Now, if you're like me and you were a kid that grew up in the 90s, you will likely very well remember the Tailspin cartoon. I can still remember the theme tune, whoa, whoa, tailspin, for another tailspin. Pretty much anybody who's around my age or who grew up in the 90s will be able to spontaneously sing the theme tune to this cartoon to you. It was a really good cartoon about a bear that flies a plane. I mean, what more do you need for a great concept for a cartoon than that? And it's the kind of cartoon that you would think would translate incredibly well into a video game. But weirdly, they just didn't quite get things right for this one, and there's a number of reasons why this isn't a good game. I think that it does look quite good. Graphically, it's not too bad. It's a little bit dated looking, obviously. It's like 1992, but it doesn't look too bad, and the music isn't awful. It really falls down on the gameplay. The gameplay in this game is really badly rushed. You kind of feel like the game was just bundled together to be this Tailspin thing and then pushed through without anybody actually taking the care or attention to detail to make it fun to play. Now you can play as either Kit or Baloo, just like in the cartoon, which is great. And it's nice to see that the characters are in here. The problem is that the attack system doesn't work properly. You have like one of those like tennis balls on a bit of string, and you fire that at enemies to try and damage them. The problem is that the collision detection or the hit detection on the attacks is absolutely awful. It's like the game just decides when and when it won't allow you to hit. It's like you'll be standing in front of the enemy, pounding the attack button, repeatedly hitting the enemy, and you can see the graphic of the ball hitting the enemy, and absolutely nothing will happen. And it's kind of like, how has this game become so shoddy? Like, surely anybody who playtests that can see that the collision detection on the attacks doesn't work. And so it just becomes incredibly frustrating because you kind of feel like you're playing an uphill battle. Everything is out to get you in this game, and yet your own attacks in the responsiveness of jumping and moving is just awful. It just plays incredibly sluggishly and feels just terrible to play. The actual mechanic of the game is that you go around to collect cargo, and you need to collect a certain amount of cargo to progress between each of the levels. Which isn't too bad, it works okay. Then it's kind of like a boss at the end of the levels. Again, because of the issues that I already talked about with the attack and hit collection, the bosses are an absolute nightmare. I looked up some reviews of the game and most of them pretty much pan it. I never got far enough to explore some of the flight levels, but apparently if you choose Kit rather than Baloo, you can't actually control the plane, and so it becomes unacceptably more difficult if for some reason you may have chosen Kit. I mean, there's an equal choice there. As far as you would know, one of them wouldn't be cripplingly underpowered, but as I said, the game just comes across as being terribly rushed from a gameplay point of view, and for that reason I cannot recommend that you play it. Luckily I only spent a £5 on it. I picked it up from Play Expo, and I guess it's kind of nice to have it in my collection, but I don't think that I can bring myself to revisiting it, and I played it a little bit last night and just thought, you know what, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Coming on to games that I look upon much more fondly then, and starting off with the good games, it's Castle of Illusion. I had to start with this game because this was one of the first games that I got with my Sega Mega Drive, and is therefore the game that I associate most when I think of Disney titles on the Mega Drive system. It's a game that I got on Christmas morning when I must have been like 9 or 10, and I loved playing it then, And I still love playing it today, which is a testament to how good and how relevant a game this is. And it's really one that I think that if you haven't played before, it's really an important title in the Mega Drive library as far as I'm concerned. Why is it so good? Well, I think that part of it is the graphics. The graphics really capture that Disney charm. The environments really look like they're taken out of a Disney cartoon. You know, if you take the first area, the forest, it looks like a menacing forest. It has, you know, creepy looking bats, and it has those little mushrooms that look like they're straight out of Fantasia. The animations are really well done, the environments tie together and create that sense of, you know, Disney captivation and excitement. One of the standout kind of environments would be the toy box levels, where it's like you're inside a kid's toy box, and they have little toy soldiers marching and a kind of toyful military tune in the background, and you know, little enemies on unicycles, and it really feels like you're in a toy box, similar to the library environment where you have bookworms and you have falling books. There's just a lot of attention to detail that manages to capture the Disney charm and makes you feel like you're in a Disney game. The gameplay is very solid as well. Mickey has this kind of bounce attack where you can sort of bounce on enemies and chain attacks together, and also have projectiles which you have to collect, which are a bit rarer. And the bosses work really, really well as well. So there's a lot to play for here, and this is a game that I keep coming back to time and time again. The difficulty curve is very good as well. It's one of those games that it's not a complete walk in the park. You're not just going to complete it straight away, but after a bit of practice you can get through it in one sitting. And the difficulty gets a bit higher towards the end of the game, but it's certainly one that you should be able to finish, and certainly I've completed this a couple of times without pulling what little hair I have left out. So it's certainly one that's recommended. A really beautiful, gorgeous game that just fills me full of happiness and nostalgia. Continuing on with the Illusion series then, would be World of Illusion, and this kind of builds upon some of the success of Castle of Illusion as far as I'm concerned. The cool thing about this game is that it incorporates Mickey and Donald Duck, and it brings in a good element which is 2-player. This is a very fun game to play with a friend, because one of you can play as Mickey, one of you can play as Donald, and it involves cool cooperative things like, you know, someone standing on your head to get to a ledge, seesaw type things, and one person stands on one end, fires the other one up, and you can let down ropes to help them. There's also some cooperative train rides where, you know, there's old-fashioned things where you have to pump the handlebars, whatever those are called. And they've worked very hard to make a kind of cohesive 2-player experience, which is actually really fun. Again, it carries on with some of the sort of magic and interest of Castle of Illusion, with some very fantastical themes, with magic carpet rides and just lovely looking environments. And this is one that I really like playing with a friend. I used to play this with my brother, but still I play it now when friends come round. The difficulty level, again, is similarly not too challenging. You won't have too much trouble with it. The bosses are pretty easy to beat once you've had a bit of practice. It's funny that you kind of have a magic carpet attack here, where you kind of shake dust out from your magic carpet, which is not quite as good as kind of jumping on things, but it works for this game and is relatively fun to do. It's slightly annoying though, because you can end up stunning each other if you accidentally attack each other. But that's a minor gripe. It's a very nice looking game environmentally, and is another one that you need to have in the collection, I think, for as far as I'm concerned. Right, here's one that I only recently actually discovered. This is Quackshot, a game featuring Donald Duck, and I think there was also an 8-bit counterpart, a NES game actually, but again I think that's very different to this one. So this is a game where you play as Donald Duck, and it's a very addictive game that I must have picked up again for a £5 from Play. I got quite a lot of Disney games from Play over the years. And this one feels very unique actually. You play as Donald Duck, and you have a plunger as your kind of main attack, and you don't kill enemies, but you temporarily paralyze them, so you have to fire it at the enemies to keep them still and neutralize them, and then you can kind of get past them. and the game kind of builds on using the plunger in different ways. So slightly later on, and this is the part of this game where it really has a lot of strength, where it really stands up, is that you have upgrades to your weapons. So later on you can use the weapon to fire it at walls, and then you can jump on your plunger successively to get up walls, which is great. It just adds these little extra elements to your attacks which build up as you get through the game. Following on from that, then you can fire it at birds and use it to sort of stick a plunger onto the birds and then hang on to them and go across areas of the game. And that's kind of one of the areas that I think this game is great, is that you have to explore the levels and unlock items, and the items will improve what you can do. The other area where this game is really unique is that it's non-linear. You have a map of levels which you must explore. When you get to the end of the levels, you may or may not be able to go further, but you put down a sort of stake in the ground and then can call the boys, what they call Dewey, Louie and Stewie, to come and collect you in the plane, and you can fly between the different areas, and you may need to go back to areas to revisit them to collect certain things. But certainly you'll need to explore the various different areas in different orders and kind of piece together what it is that you need to do. So it very much feels like an adventure game as well as a platform and action game. And I really liked that element to it. The difficulty level in this game is just about perfect. It's pretty challenging in some of the later areas, and some of the levels do involve, one of those things that Mega Drive games did with them was slightly cheap things where you couldn't predict what was going to happen to you, for example falling and there's spikes beneath you. But that doesn't happen too often. For the most part, the difficulty level is just right. There were some pretty tricky action sequences, pretty tricky jumps, and pretty tricky things to figure out. But on the whole, it was manageable. And I like that you have to use your head a little bit in this game. There are what you might call puzzles. You get kind of a treasure map that tells you how to survive a particularly lethal part of the game, and you've got to use your noggin a little bit. Those areas at first seemed very daunting, and I nearly lost my rag with them because I died a few times, but if you just try to stay cool, the game isn't so obscure that you'll end up just throwing it out of the window. It's very, very fun. And another one that I managed to complete pretty much in one sitting. The nice thing about it is that it doesn't have a continue system in the sense that you can run out of continues. You can play for as long as you want to, you just start back at, say, the beginning of the area. There are some enemies in the game that I couldn't quite figure out how to defeat. There's like a big, what's Goofy's uncle type guy called? I never managed to figure out how to actually stop him, and ended up always taking hits from him. But apart from that, the gameplay mechanic of the plunger was really, really good, and you can use different items as well. There's like popcorn and a bubblegum firing thing. So yeah, really, really good. Very, very lovely to look at. The environments are beautiful in this game, and another example of Disney doing it right. And this game isn't particularly expensive or particularly hard to get hold of, so I think this is actually a standout title that I never played as a child, and I kind of regret it because now seeing it as an adult I realise actually this is very, very solid. So yeah, definitely another one to check out. And we're just building now on quality titles. This is one very close to my heart, Aladdin. Actually, sorry, you got a bit of glare there. Aladdin, and actually back in the day I first had this on PC. I think it was on PC and the Amiga, but it's just as good on the Sega Mega Drive, and that's the version that I remember most as an adult. Again, the Aladdin movie was one of the best Disney movies. Everybody of my generation loved that film, and most of us could probably quote a large chunk of the songs. The music of that film is a great part of its charm, and that translates very well into the game. The game is full of those lovely songs and themes and melodies that were in the film that just grabbed your attention as a child and still grab my attention now playing the game. And one of the things that made the film so good was obviously Robin Williams as the genie. What a hero, and we're all obviously so sad that he passed away, but his legacy lives on in the characters that he left, and the genie was just one of those characters in Disney films that was just so amazing, so superb, and just everybody loved him. And yes, you'll be obviously, if you know this game, you'll know that there is a full level inside the lamp full of the genie's craziness. Now, the great thing about this game is that it very closely maps areas from the films, and it does feel like you're inside the Aladdin movie. You know, starting off on the sort of Arabian Nights type areas, moving on into like the magic carpet ride, and the inside the lamp levels. It just has all of these classic parts from the film. It's very colourful, it's very vibrant, the gameplay mechanics work well, you've got sword attacks, you've got bonus levels actually which are really hard and really challenging and actually quite important to get extra lives from. And those add an extra element of variety to the game. It's another one that's not too challenging that I did manage to complete with a little bit of practice. I remember the end boss being a little bit tough, but by that point you should have racked up lots of extra lives and continues to help you along your way. And it's another one where you can see that the work was put in to capture the magic of the film, and it's just another really, really great game that I would just highly recommend that you pick up. Whatever system you play it on, they're all really good. And yeah, I managed to complete this one playing it as a sort of level or a life type thing with my friend Alid. We stayed up really late one night playing it, and we had so much fun. It's just a lot of fun. I remember there are some slightly cheap areas in this game as well. Mega Drive just associated with cheapness at times, where you can't. I think on the magic carpet level you can't know which is the correct choice without making the choice and finding out later whether it was right or wrong. But on the whole, it's a very fun game that feels pretty fair for the most part. So yeah, I just love this game. I kind of want to play it right now. And then another really, really superb one, boasting a 24 megabyte cartridge, is The Lion King. Another very well remembered film from most of our childhoods, one of my favourite Disney movies. I can remember seeing this movie in the cinema when I was a kid and kind of trying not to cry because of how sad the stampede scene was. I just had like a really bad lump in my throat and I was like trying to appear brave in front of my mum and my brother. That was back in the day when Urmston Curzon Cinema used to be open. It's not there anymore. Sad when these things move along, isn't it? You kind of go back and wish everything stayed the same as in childhood. That was a cinema that had the old system of having a break in the middle, and you could get popcorn and snacks, and a lady would stand at the front with a tray of snacks. Good times. But the film is absolutely superb. And this is an absolutely top-notch Disney game, and maybe even more so than the Aladdin game, it captures the feeling of the film. It's got all of the characters in here. It's got Simba, it's got Timon and Pumbaa, it's got, God, I'm running out of Mufasa. Yes, it's got Mufasa. I'm trying to remember the flipping names of everybody now, the test of my knowledge. And it's got the lovely songs from the movie, Oh, I Just Can't Wait to Be diddle-a-dip-dip-da-da-da-do. Yes, it's got all of that in it. Now, I remember as a child, I couldn't play this game, I couldn't get anywhere in it because pretty much by level 2, it became impossible. It's a game that drops you in there with a horrible level, horribly early on in the game, and I don't know how kids managed to play it because I couldn't cope with it. The level I'm talking about is the level where you have to get chucked around by the monkeys, because it's really challenging for a child, and actually even as an adult I had some horrible moments of wanting to scream and turn the whole thing off and rage quit. Not just the monkey throwing, as though that's not difficult enough, but also some pretty hairy, fast action, jumping, ostrich riding sequences that are just unnecessarily difficult for so early on. Just, lead us in slowly, please. But if you get those frustrations aside, the levels really closely mirror the film. You've got the elephant's graveyard, you've got the giraffe level, you've got the stampede even, and the stampede levels is really creative because it's fully it's not fully 3D, it's a pseudo 3D level where you're running away and you have to move left and right and jump over obstacles. And I like it when games have variety. It's not all just action and platforming, it combines with different types of levels. And there's also sort of quite a lot of combat later on. And the nice thing about the game is that you follow Simba as he grows up from a cub into a fully grown lion, and your attacks change. You start to develop a claw attack. The elephant graveyard level is very tough as well, and there's some areas that are really hairy. It's not a game for the light-hearted because the difficulty level does ramp up a lot. And I remember there are certain levels where you're balancing on a raft through lava, and the game does feel a touch cheap in those areas. There are bats that are designed to knock you off. There are areas where you have to move really quickly or you'll die, and I felt like the difficulty level was a little bit on the too difficult and too cheap side, but with some practice you can get there. I haven't actually ever managed to complete it because I found it a bit too difficult, but I did get to the last, or if not the second to last level, where there's just an endless amount of fights with hyenas. But this is a game that is just really at the top in terms of the graphics that Disney managed, and in terms of capturing the feel of the film, this game probably is second to none for that. It's a must-have game, even though it's got some drawbacks in terms of being a little bit tough in areas and being a little bit overwhelming. It is still a very, very good game. It just takes a bit of practice. And it just I love the music in the game. It just captures the film so well, and so yeah, you've got to check this one out. There are some other Disney games that I used to have that aren't in my collection. There's another Mickey the Mouse game. The name evades me now, and there's also the Jungle Book, but I don't have those anymore, so I'm not going to talk about those. But anyway, I've taken you through the Disney games that I have in my collection. Let me know your thoughts about those games, and any recommendations or comments, please let me know in the section below. Take care, guys, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Bye.